Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry, episode 176. As always, I'm joined by Dom.
It is an honor to be here with both of you tonight.
And and Jordan.
Well, Dom, the honor is all mine. As I spoke to you guys before the show, this will be my final run of episodes leading up to the final 180 that I'll be on. And so the honor is absolutely all mine, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being on the show with me for 180 plus episodes. We have bonuses and stuff.
Yeah, well, the writers said that we've had enough hair on the show, and Jordan refused to get a haircut. So
exactly.
We had to have him written
off.
Yeah. Yep, we got him right him off the show. It's been a long ride. It's gonna suck to have you go, but for those listening, the last episode he's going to be on 180. We're going to try to do a special Jordan-centric, Jordan-focused podcast. So definitely check out that. And after he leaves the show, you can still follow him on the Twitters and everything and see what he's up to.
Yeah.
And to commemorate this, today I found out that we got our first 5-star review on iTunes, which is dope.
There we go.
One review doesn't sound like a lot, but the call to action for such a small community like we have, it's not like you can just say something and,
Somebody listened to one of our shows and they were like, yes, please. And they made that review.
And to clarify, we don't have any other reviews. So I'm not saying this is our first 5-star review. This is our first review, and It happens to be a 5-star. So that's great.
Also to clarify, I just said that I'm leaving the show without giving any reason whatsoever. So, as I mentioned to you guys, I've decided to take an actual break from video gaming podcasts in general. An indefinite hiatus, I guess, if you will. And with that being said, that doesn't work so well if I'm still on a video game podcast every week. So shifting away from that in my life is going to mean that probably what's best for me is that I move on from this show. And so it really isn't any hard feelings. We were just talking about how we're still going to, keep our chat open and all those sorts of things. So it is a friendly parting, if you will.
And to be able to do a podcast for 180 weeks, give or take, skipping weeks and stuff.
It's like 4 years now, right? Because it was the start of 2016.
Yeah, with the same 3 people. To even have that much time to talk to you guys about video games, I'll cherish. You know what I mean? And obviously, me and Dom will still be doing it until Dom leaves me too, and I'm left alone in the rain.
It is cool, like you said, that we have that library to go back to of like, oh, remember when, Jerrad and I were playing this game, or Dom and Jerrad were playing Sekiro, or whatever, there's cool milestones there.
Well, and it's weird because, like, our friendship with one another, all 3 of us kind of grew through the podcast, you know what I mean? Because obviously we live so far away from one another, so it's really cool.
Definitely.
Not a lot of people can say they did a podcast with 2 of their friends for almost 4 years, It's awesome.
Exactly. Happy to have done it. Happy to keep doing it for another few weeks. Never go full Jordan unless it's the final few episodes. Ka-chow.
So
I'm excited.
Let's head into the rundown. We got some news stories here. We don't really have a huge topic this week. There was enough really good pieces of news that I just kind of wanted to go through those. The first one is primarily in my wheelhouse because I know neither of you really care about Apex Legends, but I wanted to talk about it specifically for the way that they introduced their new legend to the game. So let me set things up. Since around Halloween of last year in 2019, Apex Legends has been teasing their next legend, right? And from all the clues and tidbits that the internet has been finding, it was supposed to be this guy called Revenant. That's supposed to be...
Real quick, we're walking into February, and they've been teasing this for how many months now? Since October?
They only teased it on Halloween. People have been trying to figure out what that tease meant since then. Sorry, I didn't clarify that clearly.
That's still 3 months. For a character drop in a video game, when we think about like shadow drops and all this, and they're out there teasing an individual character for 3 months, so that's...
Well,
they
here's
must
the
have
thing.
something with that. They must have an audience, that cares.
And it's kind of like this with these hero shooters, and obviously this is a battle royale where they only release 3 or 4 characters a year, so they kind of make it a big deal. With this one, it was interesting. So people found out that it was going to be this character called Revenant, who's this evil, murderous assassin robot. It's kind of like the antithesis to Pathfinder. You guys know Pathfinder, right? From Apex Legends. It's like the robot character in that game has like a smiley emoji on his face.
He was my immediate turn off to Apex Legends because I was like, oh, it's a quirky robot with a sense of humor and like he's clever with his jokes and stuff. It's many like one of the fucking times.
It's like one of the service bots from Titanfall, right? Because obviously Apex is in that same universe. So people are wondering, when is this guy going to get announced? Yada yada yada. Last week they started talking about season 4 of Apex Legends, and they introduced this new legend. His name being Forge. Now you're going to say, well, that's not Revenant, right? So Forge is basically a big, bulky. He's John Cena with the metal arm. Is the easiest way to describe him. He was going to be their first melee character, melee-focused character, right? Because there is melee in Apex Legends, even though it's primarily focused on first-person shooting. So they introduced this guy, and people were like, oh, half of the audience was split. Half of them were like, oh, cool, melee-centric legend. The other half were like, what happened to Revenant? So a couple of days passed, and they talked about his abilities and stuff. A couple of days passed. They uploaded an animated video of this Forge character getting interviewed by a news station because he was entering the Apex games. And 15 seconds left in that video, Revenant comes out of nowhere, shuts down the power in the facility, and kills him. Like, stone cold kills him. So they made all of this fanfare to introduce this new character, right? This Forge guy, and then they just killed him. And people are like, oh, is it just a weird, like, marketing thing? Then they did a follow-up thing where it's like a news report talking about, like, yeah, that dude's dead. They even poked fun at it, saying like he was never defeated in battle except this one time. You know what I mean? So it was a really cool reveal because it went from faking out your audience to disappointing half your audience to like bringing it all back and having a surprise introduction of this guy. Today, the day of recording this on January 30th, they released the trailer for Revenant, and he is horrifying. So basically, his backstory is he was a human assassin that was manipulated and experimented on by Hammond Industries, which is like the bad tech facility for the world of Apex Legends. And they manipulated him and experimented on him so much that he eventually became way more robot than human, right? So he's not even a cyborg anymore. They just replaced him time over time over time. And with that, he even lost his human side, that being his empathy and moral standards and everything. And he's just like this brutal killing machine. And in the trailer, they set up probably what's going to be a future character. The daughter of the guy he assassinates in the trailer, at the last scene of the trailer, she's seen crying over her dad's dead body. So
vengeance.
Yeah, exactly. I just thought it was a really cool reveal because they teased this guy, then they introduced this new character, did all of the artwork, the assets, came up with abilities for him, only to kill him. They just like murdered this dude.
Well, Jerrad, if I'm being honest, that kind of reminds me of these marketing campaigns for Apex, Overwatch, basically any game that is going to be revealing a character other than like Smash in the way that they do. Because I think it's really cool that they do this. It's very cool that they have the fanfare and that they go all in on it. But then it's weird that they have these like narratives going on in the trailers, but then there's no like storyline or cutscene in the game. And I know I've already said this before on the show, so I apologize for repeating myself. But nonetheless, it's just like, it just feels like such a tease, you know? It just feels like I want to jump into that game and like play through a storyline, even if it's through online multiplayer, you know?
I think a really cool way they could evolve this in the future, and I hope maybe Overwatch 2 does this in Apex Legends on next gen, is whenever a new character gets released, they can release it alongside a single player narrative chapter. It doesn't need to be its own like full 8-hour campaign, but a nice experience to tell the story too. I agree with you. That's the worst part about seeing the new Overwatch trailers with their beautiful CG is that it's a tease because we don't have that. You know what I mean? We want like an Overwatch movie or even a single player campaign, and we don't get that. So I agree with you. It's kind of like teasing.
If they would do a separate animated movie, then I'd be like, cool, you're good. But it's just like, why go to all this trouble to like build up this kind of like animated universe type of thing, and then I don't know. It's like you got me enticed. Anytime you have a connected story, you know, a narrative, like I said, you've got me enticed, and then to hear that it doesn't pan out, it's like, yeah, you guys could obviously do it. I mean, if we're talking about Overwatch, we're talking about Apex Legends, those are coming from some of the probably wealthiest developers in all the lands, so they could certainly do it, you know.
My hope is that maybe Titanfall 3 evolves into like an Apex Legends single player game, you know, in some way. I'd be really interested in that. Next up,
it's gonna be, just real quick, it's gonna be interesting to see how the mainline Titanfall franchise responds to Apex Legends with it not having the Titanfall name in it. You know, like how is that gonna because Apex Legends really kind of distanced itself from the Titanfall of it all. Like there's not a lot. I don't think there's like guys or gals that just played Titanfall and enjoyed it and finished it, whatever, and then they may not play a bunch of video games and they hear about Apex Legends, but they probably have no idea that it's connected to Titanfall whatsoever. So it'll be interesting to see how Titanfall 3, whatever it's called, if it's, you know, maybe even its title has some kind of connection to either the word Apex or Legends, to throw back to that now that they have these two like separate branches but successful branches in this one franchise.
Yeah, it's gonna be like, is it gonna have a subtitle so people know it's related to Apex, or is it gonna be primarily named after Apex? Because is that franchise bigger than Titanfall now? Like, you know, how do you balance that out?
Could it be Titanfall Legends? Could it be Titanfall Apex? You know, that would make sense if you think about it.
Yeah, it's interesting for Respawn in general because they have those options, and obviously the Titanfall franchise hasn't been treated exceptionally well by EA with its shows and release dates and such. So we'll see what happens. I knew that you guys wouldn't be super interested in that. I just thought it was a clever, you know, character reveal that we hadn't really seen.
Interesting nonetheless when you look at the way that they're doing things now. You know, the way that these character reveals come about.
Yeah, and I applaud them for putting in, because they had to pay artists and stuff to make all of those assets for that Forge character, you know, and a voice actor because he's fully voiced.
That's exactly what I thought. As soon as you said they killed him, I was like, oh, cool. That's how they reveal Revenant. And it was through, you know, this other guy's story. But what about the character designers that designed him as if he were on the level with all the other guys that you're going to be paying for, you know, and that you're going to be playing with for hours and hours and hours?
My assumption is they'll bring him back somehow. Like he'll be maybe even more cyborg than what he was before, you know? Like he didn't die. They like revived him somehow.
Yeah, they get like just his data chip or whatever.
Yeah. Next up, this is something that all three of us are going to be super excited for because we all just recently binged The Witcher and we all love that franchise. According to an official posted synopsis by Netflix, the recently announced Witcher animated film will supposedly focus on Vesemir's origin story.
There we fucking go. Now, who's Vesemir, Don?
Vesemir?
Yes.
The older Witcher? That kind of like...
There you go. He's Geralt's master.
Yeah. Geralt's Yoda.
Is what we want to know about. He's Geralt's Yoda, yeah. So that's what we want to know about. He raised Geralt because they are essentially like orphans, or, you know, they're essentially orphans Witchers that can survive the mutations. Like, unfortunately, a lot of them die off as children. So they have a weird relationship, to say the least, and it'll be cool how they bring him about. And I felt like they were really teasing him at the end of season 1, so I'm certainly interested to see how he comes into play in the Netflix live action Witcher stuff.
Yeah, and I think giving his backstory, because everybody who watched The Witcher isn't necessarily going to be down to watch an animated film. You know what I mean? Obviously, a good portion of them, but there are those people who just like don't like animated movies, right? But for those people who are interested, it'll give them enough built-in context for that character when they introduce him in season 2. You know, it's a really interesting way to do it.
It's going to be one of those like interesting side stories that you do not need to watch at all, but is just for the fans that want it.
Yeah.
So, I got a hot take on this one. I got a bold prediction. Maybe not that bold.
Wait, those are two different things. A hot take or a bold prediction?
Yeah.
I'm interested how it could be both.
A hot take is like
bold
when
prediction,
I tell you
okay.
you're an idiot for your bold prediction.
So it's been, talked about that, a lot of people want Mark Hamill to be Vesemir in season 2, right?
There we go.
And so,
voicing him,
and he even responded, I guess, to some of the rumors, like, yeah, sure, I'll do it, in his Mark Hamill kind of dopey, charmy way, right?
Yeah.
But obviously Mark Hamill is also experienced as a voice actor, so
Absolutely.
I mean, he could do both, right? He could voice Vesemir in
that'd be great,
depending on how young they want to make Vesemir in this animated movie, right? But that would be cool if they had that continuity in it's Mark Hamill voicing the animated character, but then also Mark Hamill playing the real character. I don't know how many times that's happened in media where it worked out that way.
I think he could even do whatever age they need him to be, because he will still jump into voice acting roles for like higher pitched characters, for example, and totally nail it.
Okay, I believe it. Yeah,
that's my
I
hope.
just thought that would be cool. Yeah.
When this was announced to be a Vesemir origin story, and obviously the Mark Hamill stuff, I'm like, yeah, he can voice act. He's a brilliant voice actor. You know what I mean? Have him be that too.
Yes. Let's do it.
This next news story, it's not super interesting, but it was some breaking news that came out earlier before we started recording. EA stated today in a stakeholder conference that they will release 14 titles in their 2021 fiscal year. So that's between April of this year and March of next year. And they kind of broke it down a little bit. So 4 of these sports titles, 4 of them will be sports titles, which you would assume FIFA, Madden, possibly NBA Live, and what do you say, Jordan?
That's not very many. I thought more of them would be sports.
Yeah. So FIFA, Madden, you would assume NBA Live, and then something I'm missing that EA puts out as a sports title. NHL, yes, sorry. Sorry, Dom. 4 other major titles. So we'd assume Battlefront 3 or something, or, no clue there. It just says 4 other major titles. You assume AAA. Next, 4 titles from third-party indie developers. One of these, I hope, is the supposed KOTOR remake that's being, done out of EA's publishing house. And then you'd assume, what's their partner program called again? EA, not EA Play.
Originals?
EA Originals. Yeah, you'd assume it's that next game from Vargas, right? Because his team's working on another game after A Way Out. You'd assume one of his games is one of those 4 indie titles.
Is that his name?
Joseph Fargas, isn't it?
Is it Fargas?
Hold on, now you have me. Let's see. Quick, Joseph Ferris. That's what it is. Yeah. Joseph Ferris. And the last 2 are mobile games in soft launch, whatever that means. The interesting thing is EA talked about Nintendo's sales success for 2020, which we'll get into later. And they basically said, like, yeah, it's really cool that all of these games are selling super well, but most of them are just Nintendo titles. So basically, saying without saying is like, yeah, we're going to stick to our current plan. We're not going to bring over Madden, We're going to have FIFA be like a legacy title that comes over, which is kind of disappointing because I'd love to have Madden on the Nintendo Switch, but, whatever.
So, is anybody playing their sports games on the Switch, Jerrad?
Well, there's not very many, right? There's NBA 2K and there's FIFA.
Yeah, but of those 2, do you think that's like... Do you think that there were guys that were playing one of those 2 games year in, year out, and then when the Switch came out, they switched to the Switch?
No, 100% no. And that's the tough part. Because there's also you don't have carryover progress, so I can't, play my franchise that I have on my Xbox on my Nintendo Switch, Obviously, Madden's not on the Nintendo Switch. And also one thing is the free-to-play mobile versions of these games. Like, Madden Mobile is free-to-play. And oftentimes for Nintendo's handhelds, Madden on those don't look very good. So it's like, why would we port Madden to this handheld to look like an inferior product when we already have our mobile version? Like, to me, EA is more likely to put Madden Mobile on Switch than an actual Madden title, which is upsetting, I think they'd be more willing to do that. And that's the thing, too, is when we'll get into it about how many Switches have sold and all that, Madden Ultimate Team makes a buttload of money, and to me it's like, why wouldn't you release it on other platforms so you can get, grow that exponentially? But maybe they just don't think it's worth it to put in that effort, because maybe they do see the sales numbers and it's like, well, yeah, people on Switch buy the hit indie games and they buy the Nintendo products, but we don't see a lot of movement on our specific titles we have on the Switch,
Maybe, the reason for that is just not powerful enough. It really isn't.
And I doubt they're optimized. I doubt EA puts in the time to optimize them to run on lower performing stuff. They probably put in the minimum.
I don't know. They probably have to even get them running.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking more from a, like, they're willing to strip out modes and stuff, in favor of putting in, like, extra work to try to tweak things to, like, the fact that Doom works on it, Madden with all of its features should be able to work on it. And I know I'm not a game developer,
Doom
and it's like, oh, it just
works.
Yeah. Oh, that's a valid
It's weird
point.
though that like Nintendo has brought over all these M-rated titles, and so it's like now you've really got the adults on your system, but you still don't want to make something powerful enough to actually run the games that they want to play.
Yeah. This next story, Phil Spencer, our boy, Mr. Game Pass himself, has been
Game Pass.
been spending a little bit of time in Japan with partners. Obviously, on this podcast, we talked about before that Xbox has little to no footprint in Japan. From the business aspect of things, people are believing that xCloud could dynamically shift that relationship with the game streaming and everything. So we'll see what happens there. But Phil specifically, earlier last week, he tweeted he was going to Japan, and he had a follow-up here at the end of his week. He stated, "Amazing week in Japan talking Xbox Series X, Game Pass, and Project xCloud with publishers and studios. Played announced and unannounced games, talked E3 2020, and discussed gaming's future. Always come away motivated by the amazing creative talent here in Japan." I want to know from you guys, what are the chances, do you think, that we see a partnership with a Japanese studio at the E3 2020, or if they have an event before the Xbox, Series X unveiling presentation? Do you think we'll see something?
I think it's 100%.
Because they have had a strong relationship the last couple of years.
Final Fantasy 16 revealed at Xbox's E3 conference. Book it.
If they were to get that over Sony, that'd be pretty crazy.
Why
to reveal the next Final Fantasy. What I want is an exclusive From Software title, just because it means we'll get another From Software title. You know what I mean? I don't really super care that it's exclusive, but I'd love if Xbox funded them to put out another game. That'd be dope. It'd be interesting if they partnered again with Platinum, right, after the whole situation with Scalebound. If they're kind of like, talk through everything and is like, hey, that didn't go so well for either of us. Kind of left us staying on both of us. How about we try to work again together?
Platinum, wasn't there just some news about how Platinum's like trying to get to where it's publishing its own games so that it doesn't have to rely on companies like Nintendo, for example?
Exactly, yeah. So it's probably not likely. It just, at what point are they in that? Are they willing to, like, if Microsoft approaches them with a blank check or a big check, it's like, well, we can do one more partnered project on our way to, So it's just good to see that he's continuing to try to build that relationship, because he knew how severed it was. And it wasn't a 1-year commitment. He's gone. Well, we've talked about this, I think, as long as the podcast has been going, that Phil's been going down to Japan. So excited to see what happens there. The demo's coming out for Phantasy Star Online 2 in the coming weeks and month. People have wanted to play that in the West for a while, so Phil was a huge part in that, of making that game available in the West for the first time. So
big deal for a very small amount of people.
Yeah, and that's something that it doesn't exactly. It's a small amount of people, right? So it's like, they did that because they knew it would ring true with a lot of hardcore people, and it wouldn't be this huge splashing headline. So, in Phil we trust. Hopefully,
good on
he nails
you, Phil.
As previously mentioned, we got those Nintendo financial results. Before doing the podcast, Dom and I talked about some of these insane numbers that we're about to mention, because good Lord. And by the way,
Gotta
these
catch 'em all.
numbers are only up to December 31st. So there's still another month of sales we don't know about.
Hey, Jared, how's that Pokemon game selling on the new Nintendo Switch?
Well, we'll start with the Nintendo Switch. As of December 31st, 2020 or 2019, it has sold 52 million units.
Wow!
Yeah.
Oh my, Jared. I had heard people talking about this. I had heard you guys talking about this. But of course, since Dom gives zero context to anything he talks about in our chat, I didn't know what the actual number was. And so I was like, you know what? I'll just let it happen. Jared's going to say it out loud, and it's going to be 20 million, and I'm going to go, wow. And then you said more than twice that, and I said, wow!
It's the power of it being a handheld hybrid, because handhelds sell like crazy for Nintendo, and you have the fact that it's also technically a console. So you have the people who normally wouldn't buy a Nintendo handheld, but would buy a console buying it, and the people who would buy a handheld buying it as well, right? So you're kind of double dipping there.
Maybe there's actually a lot of crazy motherfuckers buying both copies of the game.
Oh no, this is for the Switch, not for Pokemon.
Oh, okay, what?
Yeah.
This makes a lot more sense now.
Yes.
I was like, how did they sell 52 million copies of Pokemon?
In 6 weeks.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
You were actually pretty close with your first guess, though.
Yeah.
Nonetheless.
What were we going to say, Dom?
Jordan was pretty close with his first guess, but you'll get to it. I was going to say, besides that, though, this 52 million sounds really, really damn good. But then what you just mentioned kind of makes me rethink it slightly. I mean, this is still really good, but we also have to keep in mind that, like, along with this, they're missing out on handheld sales that they would normally have at this time, right? Because 3DSs probably aren't selling much of anything nowadays. So that's kind of an interesting thing you got to keep in mind, too, where normally their business model has both of those. Granted, handhelds are usually cheaper than $300, I guess, but it's just an interesting. I hadn't considered that.
The crossover, it's usually staggered when they they don't usually release a handheld and a console at the same time, right? Obviously, their biggest crossover was the DS and the Wii, right? Because both of those things were selling like hotcakes. But then after that, you had the 3DS selling exceptionally well, but then the Wii U selling next to nothing, right? So merging both of them together, it is weird because they are kind of losing out on the sales of somebody buying two of them. But then you have the idea of, well, they want people to buy two of them anyways, and they're marketing that way. So instead of somebody buying a Wii and a DS, they're buying a Switch and a Switch, So
yeah, which makes the Switch Lite make a lot more sense too, right? Way cheaper, and even though it's handheld only, it kind of fills a lot of that gap that they would have been feeling without a handheld selling too much.
And parents are way more likely to buy something that can't detach from itself for their kids. That's all in one brick
thing.
thing.
I thought about that. Like, I am always worried about my Switch breaking, and I've had hardware issues with that motherfucker, and I am disappointed in Nintendo, to say the least. So how the fuck would I have a child and give it a Switch and expect it to last?
Yeah, no chance, because that's what you got. Pokemon Sword and Shield, these are the numbers that Jordan wanted to hear first. We'll get to them now.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
In 6 weeks that this game was on sale. 16
52
million
million?
units.
Whoa, Jared. Whoa, 52 million copies sold. You'd have to convince me of that or I'd be a fool.
16 million units sold, which it's
Sounds
already
about
past the lifetime sales of X and Y and Sun and Moon, to put that into perspective.
Sun and Moon. Wow.
It's projected currently by analysts to be the second best-selling Pokemon generation of all time behind Red and Blue. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which is insane. And remember, this game was supposed to get boycotted because of the national deck situation. Oh, these gamer boycotts. Remember the whole story about like Call of Duty? Everyone's going to boycott Call of Duty, and then there was the Steam screenshot of everybody playing it in the group that said, "Don't buy Call of Duty this year." It's so funny.
Yeah.
This is the power of Pokemon, man. Ugh.
The power of Pokemon. The power of Pokemon. So, what was I going to ask? Don't you think they wish now that they would have fucked off with Sun and Moon Ultra and just gone straight to, let's say, Stars on the Switch.
Possibly, but part of this makes me think of, what about all those people who saw Let's Go, Eevee, and Pikachu and were disgusted and were, fiending for that first taste of actual Pokemon on the Nintendo Switch, and that led to them, for sure buying this?
Possible, and they probably picked up some fans along the way with Let's Go. I know they did, a lot of them. I hate to say it, but both Pokemon Go and Pokemon Let's Go were a lot of people's first Pokemon games, which, I'm not even talking about kids. Like, if you're a kid, that's not your fault, but you're an adult, really?
And Dom and I talked about this too when we were mentioning these sales, is that I knew a lot of people growing up who played the original Pokemon games on the Game Boy and Game Boy Color and even the Advance, and then after that point, some of them would buy the consoles, right, the GameCube and the Wii, but they wouldn't buy the handhelds, and they're like, man, if a mainline Pokemon would come to the console, I'll buy it. I just don't want to play on handheld. They're kind of double dipping here because you have the people who buy the Nintendo handhelds, the people who buy the Nintendo consoles, and the overlap there of the Pokemon fans, right? So it's like just dipping into all of those. And we talked about this before the game released of like, this will probably be the best selling game on the Switch, and it's headed there real quick. We had some other sales numbers though, not super impressive like Pokemon, but still pretty impressive in their own right. Luigi's Mansion 3 and Super Mario Maker 2 both passed 5 million units sold. Not surprising for Super Mario Maker 2, really awesome for Luigi's Mansion 3, Yeah. That's a game that if it doesn't sell well, they could just be like, we're kind of done with that sub-franchise for a while. But honestly, the fact that it sold as well, super good.
I cannot believe that. Like, I can believe Mario Maker. 5 million in its first few months for Luigi's Mansion 3, a sequel, mind you, to a 3DS game.
Yep.
That's crazy.
You couldn't have this on the year Luigi. It had happened years later. The release date for that, too, on Halloween was a super smart marketing thing, too, Next up, Link's Awakening.
Yes, but I want more Halloween stuff before Halloween. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get me in the mood beforehand. Otherwise, there's one day for me to see your movie that you released on Halloween, or it's like November and I'm going to see a Halloween-themed movie. Come on.
One thing to mention, too, with the Pokemon stuff, Pokemon games were normally $40. They're $60 now.
Yeah.
So this thing has brought them a lot more money.
Dom mentioned that in our chat, and I was like, that is a very good point, because people are used to paying a little less with 3DS games, and that clearly didn't matter at all.
Speaking of, thank you for that transition, Jordan. Link's Awakening sold 4 million copies. I was one of those busters that paid the $60.
Yep. Me too.
I still really enjoyed that game. I don't mind paying $60. I'm still upset that it cost $60, but I really enjoyed my experience with it. Next up, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, another game that needed to kind of sell well for the franchise.
Wait. 8 million.
No, 2.5.
Fuck! I wanted it to be on Fire Emblem.
No. That's still good for Fire Emblem. It's still pretty solid for Fire Emblem, but
Two and a half? Dude, like, Luigi's Mansion just dunked on your ass. Holy shit.
I want a t-shirt that has a picture of Luigi and it says Luigi's Mansion just dunked on your ass.
And then just the 18 Fire Emblem characters from Smash Bros. Like, under the hoop.
Yeah. Lastly, Astral Chain and Marvel Ultimate Alliance both sold 1 million units. Here's the thing. That 1 million might not sound like a whole lot, but for Astral Chain, it's actually really huge for Platinum because 84% of the sales were in the West, which is huge.
I would say that is good for Astral Chain. I had hoped that, or I was thinking it would probably be closer to the Fire Emblem area.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, man, Marvel Ultimate Alliance only selling 1 million. I think that $60. A lot of people were just like me and Jared going, I cannot pull that trigger yet.
Hey, and the entire run of Jordan on this podcast, we held strong because I'm not buying it in 4 weeks. You know what I mean?
Dude, I'll wait.
Not a chance, exactly. So yeah, some pretty good stuff. Nintendo, Matt Piscatella, our boy over at the MPD, said that he expects the overall annual numbers for Nintendo Switch hardware sales to drop in 2020, but he still expects it to be the leader by far in terms of hardware. He thinks that it'll easily outsell the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, which isn't too surprising.
Okay.
Here's the last bit of news, guys. We got some
Real
rumors.
quick, what were his predictions before the last console generation, Jared?
I don't think he was a part of MPD in 2012.
Well, but wasn't he the one saying that it was like going to be the last generation, or was that some other guy?
No, you're thinking of. I'll pull up his name now.
Pachter.
He's the
Pachter.
one that's like
Michael Pachter.
Michael Pachter. There you go. Yep. That's that guy. It's like consoles are dead. Mobile games are the future. The future's now, old man. Last week with Chris,
Wow.
Topher Noons, we talked about these KOTOR rumors. This week, we have some more sources talking about a game that's in development. This being Resident Evil 8. So, boys, here are the rumors.
You know what? I gotta say, Resident Evil. If I leave you with nothing else on this show, Jared, it is Resident Evil.
Yeah, I say it a little fast like most people do, and it all gels.
Everybody does it. Everyone
Yeah.
does it. I am the Crusader. I'm laying down my lance, but before I do, you must hear my cry.
It's like the MMA fight's over, but when the ref's not looking, just give me one little like jab in the ribs.
Yeah, just get you in the ribs real
Yeah.
quick.
So Ethan from 7 is going to be the protagonist. Obviously, he was the new protagonist in 7 that had to deal with the Baker family.
Resident Evil 7, of course.
Set in first person again. Obviously, this is huge because people didn't know if they were going to continue with the first person view or if they were going to go back to third person. This one isn't a rumor though. Capcom confirmed to Eurogamer after all of these rumors, got reported on that it is going to be first person. So they're like,
Okay.
we're not gonna talk about any of those rumors, but yeah, it's first person. It's really weird.
Yeah, it's like, except for the one rumor that we are going to talk about.
That's smart to get ahead of though, because that is a very contentious thing in the franchise's fan base, right? Some people love the classic third person with the tanky controls. Obviously, the remakes have fixed some of that. Other people felt that switching to first person really brought back a lot of those horror elements the franchise was losing over the course of 5, 6, and then they waited to see what happened with 7, right? So
It's so weird how the trajectory of the Resident Evil franchise has come about in the last few years, because people have been saying like, oh, they'll do this Resident Evil 2 remake and then they'll remake the third game, or oh, it looks like they're going first person with the mainline franchise, and I guess the Resident Evil 2 remake, that'll be third person just like that game was. And I bet they'll do this like branching style between the two games, like the remakes and the main lines. And I was just like, huh, because usually people aren't as spot on.
Yeah.
But I would just say that the general consensus has been exactly what has happened with the Resident Evil franchise.
Yeah, and so one of the big criticisms with 7, obviously some people had issues with the first person, but a lot of people didn't like the molded, which were like the weird like fungus type black monster things.
Yeah,
This says that zombies are returning, so they're kind of ditching the molded. They're bringing zombies back. There's going to be a new enemy type, werewolves, but obviously like Resident Evil-ish werewolves, not your traditional, what you think of, in the Twilights and the Underworlds. Hate that I mentioned those two film franchises in the same sentence. The one thing I didn't mention off the top, this wasn't put in multiple places like the rest of these. Some of these sources were saying it's going to take place in a Transylvania type location, which gives way to the werewolf type enemies. There's going to be a new stalker enemy type. And lastly, Chris Redfield will return in some form. Obviously, spoilers if you haven't played Resident Evil 7. He was in the end of that game. So I want to know from you guys real quick. Sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
I was just going to say, what was I going to say? I don't know. Never mind.
Do you guys think it's smart that they're sticking with Ethan and not going back to some of the more beloved characters with 8? And do you think it's a smart call to stick with first person now that they have these two kind of, they have the remakes that are in the third person, giving people that nostalgic feel for the franchise, and now they have first person bringing in a modern audience while still capturing the essence of the RE franchise that, fans have loved for years?
Yeah, I think it's good. It allows them to potentially release all these games closer together.
Yeah.
They're different enough in kind of fundamental ways that it doesn't feel like, oh, here's another Resident Evil, same as the last one. It's different enough, and it allows them to annualize it and still allow some of that creative freedom, I guess, to do things a little differently in each. And I think that'll help at least help the games critically and probably sell better too. Just because it's just different. It's just a different style, so I think that's good.
Yeah. And Ethan, you're cool with them keeping him and not going to a character people already love?
Yeah, I mean,
because they already keep it first.
Because like you already hinted or whatever, or part of the rumor is Chris Redfield still is going to be in this game, so it's not like they're abandoning, all the characters. And I'm sure someone else will pop up too at some point in this game that they're keeping a secret, right? So let's have new people also.
Also, it's first person, so wouldn't Ethan be the smarter choice? Because if you did pick one of these beloved characters and it was first person, people would complain even more that they don't get to see them all that often, right? So picking Ethan is like a way around that of this isn't a character everyone necessarily loves, but he will be our protagonist moving forward, so we can go with first person. Yeah.
So I remember what I was going to say. It was, do you think that Capcom confirming the one piece of this rumor kind of confirms all of it?
I mean, there's a point there. It's the fact that they didn't comment on them, but they decided to comment on one part of it is well.
And they confirmed it. They didn't deny it. They confirmed one part of it. So it's like, if you're giving credence to a little bit of it, then it's probably got to have some fact, because the way leaks currently work is, of course, you can usually smell it out. Like, if it's somebody just bullshitting, there are a lot of telltale signs. And then there are, on the other hand, true sources that work at a company, and they end up being right much of the time. And a lot of times the things that they're wrong on just get taken out of a game or a movie, whatever gets leaked, right? So
yeah,
I think that's probably got to be the case here, where this is an actual source who, of course, got this one thing right that Capcom confirms, and then all the other stuff is probably not that far off if they're confirming it, and if they at least got that much right, so.
And them showcasing RE7 with the kitchen demo at PlayStation's E3 years ago, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see this pop up at the PlayStation 5 reveal event, because this would get a pop. It's like, oh, RE8,
I can't wait to see what the game lineups for those are going to be like, man. I mean, I know a lot of people are really excited about the specs, and of course there is a lot to be excited about there. I think that they're going to be powerful enough. I'm hoping for 4K 30 at this point, but we'll see. Really, I'm just excited to see the possible Horizon 2s and Spider-Man 2s and the, whatever we see on the Xbox side. Of course, Hellblade 2 is a part of that. We're talking about like Cyberpunk and Final Fantasy VII Remake, and the Avengers right now is like the big games that we're concerned about coming out soon, even though they all got delayed. But then it's going to be this whole new thing of like all these other games that are close, guys, that we don't even know about, that are not even on the edge of our imagination, that are playable this fall. That's really cool.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be exciting. Hopefully that PlayStation event happens before episode 180. I hope it happens before episode 180. Let's talk about what we've been playing. Last week I mentioned Minute and a couple of other games, and I had completed Minute. This week I started and finished the game all within the same week again. Another Game Pass title, a game that I'd been meaning to get to since last year, a game that was underrated by a lot of people and a lot of people didn't play it, despite the first one getting really good reviews and people loving it. Guacamelee 2.
Okay.
I started and finished this game in 2 play sessions. It took me about 8.5 hours. I just,
Whoa.
yeah, it's just one of those games that I continued playing and didn't want to put down the controller. I really loved
4
it.
hours.
Yeah, well, I think one day was like, Sunday, and since there was no football, I just went ham. And then the next day, it was like a couple more hours into it, you know?
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, so it wasn't really 4-4. It was like 6-2.5. You know?
So you really loved it then, huh?
It's my junk food of video games because it's a platformer that has fun but not difficult combat that lets you do all these fun moves. It doesn't take itself seriously, has a story that really doesn't matter. It pokes humor at itself. The cool thing with the sequel is that it introduced the ability for Juan, the main character, to turn into a chicken. So there's a secondary aspect to the combat with the chicken where there's different moves, but that also ends up with entirely specific areas of traversal for the chicken. And there's these specific chicken dungeon runs that you have to do with it that are like difficult platforming that change up the game in a way because the chicken moves and feels different than Juan, which is like the big lumbering guy. Yeah, like in many ways it is more of Guacamelee. It didn't do anything exceptionally well to move, the franchise forward, but it didn't need to for me. It was just that junk food for me to get in and play and have fun. And yeah, some of it I paid attention to. A lot of it I was listening to podcasts while playing it, but that didn't really take away from the fun I was having. I really enjoyed that game. Once again, excellent Game Pass title. Was able to play it and get done with it, and I can move on to other stuff. But I'm kind of upset with myself for not playing it sooner because A, it's not a huge time commitment, right? It was only 8.5 hours. And B, I knew I was going to like it, and it got good reviews. I just never got around to it.
Sure.
So the lesson I learned from this is that...
DrinkBox.
Yeah, shout out to DrinkBox. There's some cool severed Easter eggs in the game as well. I didn't play it, but obviously that was their last game before this. If you're into platforming and like melee, arcadey action, definitely give it a go. The thing I learned from this is that if I know a game's not going to be a big time commitment, I need to just get over that like game start paralysis. I don't know if you guys go through this where you want to start up a new game, but you're not sure which game, and you just instead it's like the Netflix thing, right? The Netflix browse situation. You're like, I want to watch Netflix. You hop on Netflix, you go through your list of like all of these movies you knew you wanted to watch, but then you're just like paralyzed by choice, and then you spend that whole time you could have had playing a game or watching a movie looking through the games and the movies, right? So
Jared, I would say that feeling is exacerbated by video games because not only do you have to click on the thing, whatever it is, but you also, with games, if you're starting a new one, you have to learn it.
Yep.
And so I remember as a kid, before we were able to preload games onto our consoles and play them at, for the Central Time Zone, I can play it at 11 p.m., right? On a Monday night before it comes out on a Tuesday. Before we could do that, as a kid, I really wouldn't start new video games if it was nighttime, really. Because it's like, it's going to take me some time to get into this, figure out what the fuck's going on, controls, tutorials, yada, yada, yada. And I would just feel like, I'm too tired, or like, it's already nighttime, like, fuck it, I'll start it during the day when I have some time. I was a kid, obviously I had, more free time back then, but it's like, games take that extra step. They require a little bit more. Just like a book requires a little bit more than just sitting back and watching a movie. There is the tutorial aspect of gaming.
Yeah, especially it's heavily dependent on the genre too, right? Of like how much learning do I have to do,
Dude, like Persona games, you're not even really starting the game until 5-6 hours in.
Jesus Christ.
Like, you're starting the game. You're getting introduced to the characters, and you're learning the combat and all that, but the tutorial does not end for hours and hours later.
Nothing else really to mention of note. I played some more NBA 2K. I played some more Remnant from the Ashes. That's pretty much it for me. The big thing was Guacamelee 2. Really enjoyed it. I want a third one now, and I will play it a lot sooner than I played this one. But yeah, that's it for me. What about you guys?
Did you play the first one?
Yeah, I loved that one. I didn't play it actually until it was like the Guacamelee XXL version or something. It was like the deluxe
DLC.
version of that game. That's when I learned about it, played it, loved it, got all the achievements in it, if I remember correctly. And then when they announced Severed, I was kind of disappointed. I was like, oh, I was hoping they'd do a sequel. Then they announced a sequel, and I was a hypocrite because I didn't even play it for a long time. So, yeah. You guys, what have you guys been playing the last week?
Man, just a whole shit ton of Days Gone.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
And I've talked about it a lot before, so I won't dwell too long, but it gets better. It just keeps getting better and better. Even the story especially, I've been surprised at how engaged I've been with what you would, assume is another fucking zombie story. And of course, like a lot of the same tropes as like The Walking Dead and so on are in this. But it also does enough new stuff that makes it different, and the characters are all mostly all like really interesting and really engaging. Yeah, and even to this point though, I still, so surely if you've even paid attention the slightest bit to this game, is they have like Walking Dead style hordes of zombies, right, where there's literally like hundreds of them on a screen.
Yep.
And I gotta be like approaching 30-40 hours into this, and I still I tried once to take down a horde, and it was just no, you just can't do it.
No.
And even still, I'm like, I'm not even gonna try again yet, because I'm like, there's still so much gear that you can see that you will get, but it's still inaccessible. And I'm just like, no, I need to be able to get all this other stuff before I even try. But
yeah,
the cool part of that though is that having a motorcycle, you do have like even though you can't beat them, like you have just such freedom to, you're obviously really fast, especially as you upgrade your bike, but you can weave in and out of tight spaces and slide past giant groups of zombies. And that's like surprisingly fun to do. But yeah, it's a great game.
I had the ending of that game spoiled, and I will say it's dope. Obviously, I don't want to say anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the ending of that game is way cooler than I thought it was going to be.
Can we have Dom take his headphone out for 5 seconds?
Let me say this one thing real quick, though. I need to wait for him to put his headphone back in.
Just spoil it.
Hold on. You put it back on. Tell him no. Say no. Say no. No, I don't want to spoil it for him.
No. Jared, you're supposed to spoil it for me.
No, I know. I was telling you to tell him no to not put the headphone back on so I can say it.
Oh, you gave me a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Dom, he was going to say something before you took your headphone out. Jared, say that part.
Oh, okay.
After you're done with it, because I don't think you'll do this, you need to Google the 100% completion reward cutscene. That's all I'll say.
Oh, yeah.
Because I doubt you'll go for the 100% in it, but you should look it up because it's really cool. Now take off your head thing.
I'll definitely get the platinum, because apparently that's pretty easy to do after you beat the game. But
okay,
we'll see.
So maybe you'll see it. Take off your headphone. He'll give you a thumbs up when I'm done. So real quick, Jordan, you know how the guy's missing his wife and he thinks she dies, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the game, he goes to this encampment. I'm trying to do this, too long, didn't read. Goes to this encampment. He's like, oh, we need medicine, yada, yada, yada. They're like, okay, go see our doctor. Walks into the doctor's tent, sees his wife. He's like, what the hell? I can't believe. And she's acting like she doesn't know who she is. She's like, I don't know who you are. What are you talking about? I can help you. What medicine do you need? And he's just like mind blown of like, you don't remember me? Like super heartbroken. Once the other people in that place leave, because it's supposed to be like a very like angry, aggressive group of people, she's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Yada, yada. And she like breaks character and be like, basically saying like, oh, I was faking it because I didn't want them to know I knew you. Yeah, it's a really cool twist. Tell me he's good. Yeah,
he's good.
Were those reactions dramatized? Jordan?
I mean, yes, but I was still into it for sure.
It's a cool twist for a game that I'm like, this is just Sons of Anarchy with zombies. It's a cool twist. Yeah. Anyways, is there anything else besides Days Gone, Dom, or is that all?
That's been it. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff I've been watching and stuff, but nothing that, if it doesn't come to me, it must not be that important.
Yeah. Jordan?
Okay. I might be having some connection issues. I apologize if it sounds weird. Anywho, Jerrad last week, of course, spoke about the Silmarillion, which I have still been reading aloud to myself. And it is the way to fucking go, man, at least for me personally.
Tell him about the fireplace thing.
Yes, with Tolkien stuff. So, Dom, I also, when I read, I like to put stuff on in the background, jazz music, whatever. Recently, I've been doing fireplaces on YouTube on my TV. And recently, the Japanese Pokémon channel on YouTube released its first official ASMR, where it has Charmander sleeping next to a campfire, and periodically he lights the campfire with his tail, and it is perfection.
He cannot look any more unimpressed, unless his camera froze.
Yeah, I think he's been frozen. So maybe it's not me having the connection issues. Nonetheless, I could keep going. So I've been reading the Silmarillion.
I think he was doing a stone face. I was like, oh, there you go. He's back. He's back.
Like
I was completely confused.
Completely robotic there for a second.
I thought he was mean mugging or something. Yeah.
Yeah. But I've been having this wonderful campsite fire with Charmander in the background, and then I have been reading aloud to myself the words of J.R.R. Tolkien, and I think that for me is the way that those books were written, to be kind of like oral histories or oral stories like that we would tell around a campfire with your Charmander, you know, and have him light it up if it goes out. So loving the Silmarillion. Haven't got back to the Witcher stuff yet because I just kind of diverted on this like fantasy tangent reading wise, but definitely still enjoying that. And of course, gentlemen, I've been reading plenty of comic books. I'd like to give a shout out to a few. Certainly Invisible Kingdom by G. Willow Wilson, who is someone who I spoke about recently on the show with her Wonder Woman run that ended not so long ago, and really loved that run, and that's how I discovered her work. I think she's the creator of Kamala Khan, Jerrad?
Sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, so I know she had a big run on that book. I'm pretty sure she was the one that created that character, Magnificent Miss Marvel. So, Invisible Kingdom is about these, like, it's like space nuns is kind of how she herself describes it. These nuns in space. It's definitely very female, feminist focused, and has a lot of that energy to it with the female writer, of course. And that's something that you can tell is very much important and one of her passions for her. And I really appreciate the way that that's being presented, and I think that the two main characters are both females doing totally different things with totally different aspects of their characters, and I think that it's really well done. The art is gorgeous, the colors are gorgeous, and it has a lot of Dune inspiration, which I'm very much fond of. It has a lot of fantasy inspiration in general, which Dune is a big part of too, but Invisible Kingdom is a very cool comic. It's 9 issues in. I think the 9th issue came out yesterday. Yeah, so big shout out to that one. That's a Image book. It's a indie comic, so definitely worth the recommendation. I don't think I've talked about it on the show. I guess not, since it was the first time I mentioned it to you, Jerrad. But big shout out to Strange Skies over East Berlin, which is something that I heard about from you, Jared, because you brought up Jeff Loveness, and I was like, where have I heard that name before? He had done a special recently. It might have been Deadpool or something, an annual that I read, and then I enjoyed that, and then hearing you talk about him writing Strange Skies Over East Berlin, I was like, oh, what's that? It's a little mini-series just all about espionage and lies. The lies that we tell is the real big theme in it. And it is very strange sci-fi Cold War fiction. And it is fucking fantastic. It's like 4, 5, 6 issues at most. And it is really, really well done. So thanks for that rec, Jared. I guess I'll shout out one more. Think about a superhero one. I want to talk about the new Thor from Donny Cates, which we were just talking about, which is 2 issues in. Of course, I've been a huge fan of Donny Cates and the work that he's doing over at Marvel. And Thor, where he's taken him with the... I can't remember the artist's name, but the visual design that they're going with, and then the writing from Donny Cates, taking him on an adventure with Galactus as a herald of Galactus. It is a really cool new start for the character, which just wrapped up a very cool long run from the writer Jason Aaron. So, excuse me. It is fantastic so far. Obviously, only 2 issues in, but Marvel has some new comics that they've started here in 2020 that are very exciting to me so far, and not quite seeing that on the DC side, I would say. So big shout out to Donny Cates on Thor. Huge shout out to Al Ewing on Guardians of the Galaxy, which he picked up from Donny Cates, which his run I also enjoyed. So Marvel in 2020 so far hitting a good note. So yeah, did not play any video games.
No video games. Not a single one.
No, but I will be playing Injustice 2 soon enough, because I also read some Injustice as well. Read Volume 4, Year 4, Volume 1. Sorry. So I'll be playing Injustice 2 soon, and I should have played that game a long time ago, but I'm kind of glad I read the comics, and just really cool that we have such a talented fighting game studio making DC comic book fighting games that are the real motherfucking deal, if there ever was one. So shout out to NetherRealm.
Crazy thing is, we might get 2 Injustice games in between the last Batman game we got and the next Batman game we get.
Ugh. Oh. Well, technically there's the Telltale stuff, technically.
Yeah. True. That's been it for this week's episode 176. Yeah. Thank you guys for listening. If you can, head over to iTunes, leave us a review. Somebody already has. I told the guys before we started, we got our first review, and it was 5 stars. So yeah, it's a double.
Thank you.
Not only did they go out of their way to review our podcast, they gave us 5 stars. So
I want that
good
person
there.
To know that you are a 5-star individual.
Yep. Next, if you go over to YouTube, search Controlled Interests, hit the subscribe button, and if you do, there's a bell next to it. Hit that. It lets you know when we upload videos. YouTube's sub boxes aren't really trustworthy. They're a lead character in Strange Skies Over East Berlin. You can't trust him. Got to use that bell notification. Like the videos if you like him as well. Helps in the dreaded algorithm. If you head over to Twitter and you want to get our updates via tweets, I am at Jerrad_. Dom is at Dom's Oreos. Jordan is at Malamotus. And collectively, you can find us at Controlled Interests, which is at CTRLINT. It's an abbreviated form of Controlled Interest. We have, give or take, 4 or 5 weeks left with Jordan. Can't wait to...
You got to deal with me for a little longer.
You didn't let me finish, so the way you cut me off, it made me sound like I was about to say, can't wait till he's gone.
No.
Yeah. It's going to be a change, but it's going to be interesting. I'm not going to promise that there will be a third host immediately. It'll probably be me and Dom for a while, but we might end up getting a third host. They can never replace Jordan, but they will hopefully bring their own unique flavor to the podcast.
Absolutely.
But, yeah. Thank you guys for listening. If you've listened since we started back in 2016, thank you guys. We're going to be ushering in a new era of controlled interests
All new,
without
all
Jordan. All new, all different, way less hair.
Definitely. That's a fact.
Thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you guys next week.